Hi, everyone, and welcome to the most recent edition of Reach the World's live stream series for the Endurance 22 Expedition. My name is Chris Ahern. I am Director of Partnerships here at Reach the World, and I am so excited to be able to speak with you all today. We have a really wonderful collection of media to share. We have a wonderful guest that I think all of you know pretty well, although he looks a little bit different than the last time we saw him. And we have some amazing student guests, and I can already see the chat filling up with all sorts of folks from all over the country and the world. So please, if you are watching us live, please tell us who you are, where you're joining us from. Very quick welcome to those of you who I've already seen in the chat. So welcome to those of you who are calling in or tuning in from Virginia, from here in New York City, from New Jersey, Connecticut, Brazil, the United Kingdom, and so many more places I'm sure you are. So please let us know and start getting those questions ready, because we have a really fun and wonderful opportunity. We have some amazing classrooms that are joining us. We are well represented with our friends from New Jersey, and we'll be bringing them in very, very soon. But before we go any farther, I'm so excited to be able to do this. I would love to welcome my friend, my colleague, Tim Jacob, onto the stream, mainly because, Tim, your background looks a little bit different. Tell us where you are.
Hey, Chris. Hey, explorers. Wonderful to be able to connect with you again. Yes, I look a little bit different. You can tell that my background is a little different, and there's very good reasons for both of those things. It is such a delight to be able to see you all and to talk with you again today. For many of you, the last time we spoke, I was on the Agulhas II, surrounded by the sea ice of the Weddell Sea, and we had just found the Endurance. Such a big moment. I'm still sort of buzzing from that excitement. And we were talking with Director of Exploration Menson Bound and AUV Supervisor Chad Bonin about the process of finding the Endurance 10,000 feet beneath us at the time. So a lot has happened since then. And I don't want to jump too far ahead, because I have lots of pictures and videos that I can share with you today, now that I'm back someplace where there's a little bit more internet connectivity, and I can sort of pick up where we left off from that journey and take us through some of the exciting things that have happened since then. So if we have my pictures queued up, I think I am ready to sort of dive right in. Excellent. All right, so what you're looking at right now, I really wanted to start with a map. I love maps. I'm a former geography teacher, social studies teacher, and I think maps can tell you so much. And just to give you a sense of where we've been, where I've been, and where you traveled with me, up here on the top right corner of the screen, you can see South Africa, the bottom of South Africa. And if you follow the red line that leads from the bottom of South Africa, you can see the journey of the Agulhas II over many days. You can see at various points along that red line, there are date stamps: February 10th, 2022, February 11th, 2022. It shows you how far we made progress each day on our journey to the Weddell Sea. Way down at the bottom corner of the map, you can see lots of color, that beautiful purple and the red and the green. This is actually a map showing sea ice. It was produced by some of the amazing scientists at Drift and Noise, who were on the ship and sort of giving the expedition some very interesting daily information about the sea ice in the Weddell Sea. You can see all the way at the bottom, we've labeled Endurance, where Endurance was, where we found it. And then after we were finished with the search, we sort of headed north from there. You can see a second red line that goes up pretty much straight up to this finger-shaped island that's in the top left corner of the screen. And we made a special visit to an island called South Georgia Island. And I'm going to talk about that today. I'm going to pick up where we left off after finding Endurance and talk about the journey up through South Georgia Island. And then you can see the beginning of that red line on our way back to Cape Town. So let's take a look at our next picture here. All right, so This was a very, very fun part of the expedition. After we discovered Endurance and we did all of the mapping of the shipwreck, which took several more dives of the AUV as Chad Bonin and our friends on the subsea team switched out some of the components on the AUV so we could do a really complete and thorough mapping of the wreck. We had a little bit of time to celebrate, and we thought, hey, you know what we should do? We should set up the ice camps that we didn't actually need, but we have all the stuff, so let's have a party on the ice. So you can see in this picture that the ship's crew opened that big, you can see a white square on the side of the ship. We just opened it right up and put a gangplank, that path down from the ship to the ice, and everybody got to sort of come out onto the ice. We set up some of the tents so that we could have all experienced what it would be like to camp on the sea ice. What you need to remember is that this looks like solid ground, but really everyone here in this picture is standing on about 3 or 4 feet of ice, and underneath that is about 10,000 feet of water. And underneath that 10,000 feet of water, we are right on top of Sir Ernest Shackleton's Endurance, way beneath us. So it's the perfect place to have a celebration of all the hard work that everybody did. And as part of this, we had some very curious onlookers. We came out on the ice, and you can see sort of in this bottom right corner, there are a bunch of emperor penguins who really, really wanted to come over and see what was going on. And we can't go towards the penguins. We just sort of sat, and they came to us. They were so curious. They wanted to see what this big red ship was. They wanted to see what everybody was celebrating. And we had a lot of fun just sort of letting the emperor penguins waddle amongst us. The crew on the ship made this beautiful sign. You can see along the top of the sign, there are flags representing the nations that were involved in this expedition. I see South Africa, I see Sweden, I see Switzerland, I see Finland, I see France, United States, Great Britain, Russia, Germany, and I think that's New Zealand or the Falkland Islands on the far right corner. Everybody on the expedition signed this sign. If you look really closely, you might be able to see my signature on there. It's sort of in the bottom right corner. But it was a chance for us all to take a picture with the sign and celebrate the fact that we had found Endurance. It was a great day. We got to eat food on the ice. We had a picnic on the ice. We played some soccer. People were flying drones. There was just general celebration. It was a great way to end the search. So after that, oh, here's a couple more emperor penguins. Really, I can't stress enough that these penguins were so curious. They wanted to see us as much as we wanted to see them. So if we just sort of came out on the ice and started, talking to our friends and having the celebration, the emperor penguins slid on their big bellies right over to us and did sort of this with their heads and looked all around. It was really, really neat to have these beautiful animals so close to us, and got a lot of great pictures when they came up onto the ice. So after that, I think the next picture may be the beginning of, oh, wait, one more thing. Yes, when we finished our party on the ice, we took all of those things back into the ship. We didn't want to leave anything in the Weddell Sea. That included the sign. We did not leave the sign on the ice. It wouldn't have stayed there anyway. It would have floated with the ice off far away. So we took everything with us and brought it back on the ship. And then the big thing, and this, a lot of people were thinking about this even before we started leaving the Weddell Sea, was how are we going to get out of the ice, right? Since we had arrived at the Weddell Sea, the edge, the distance between where we were and the open water of the South Atlantic had grown by almost 40 nautical miles. So we were 50 nautical miles from open water in the ice, and we needed to find the best path, kind of our exit path out of the ice. So one of the things I got to participate in was a reconnaissance flight on this helicopter that you can see right here. And we flew ahead of the ship and looked for the leads or the openings in the ice that the ship could follow and get safely out of the Weddell Sea. And I think I have a video queued up here that will show you some of the neat things that I saw as part of that flight. All right, so those of you who have been paying close attention will know that what we were circling in that picture or in that video was an iceberg, right? It broke off from the ice shelf of Antarctica and got sort of trapped in the ice flow of the Weddell Sea and was slowly melting and making its way towards the North Atlantic. So you can see there are areas that are a little bit darker that would represent a very easy path for the S.A. Agulhas II to break through on its way back out to open water. But we got to do some nice circling of these big, beautiful icebergs too. And it was really, really fun to fly in a helicopter with the really, really skilled pilots from Ultimate Heli, and also take Sealy. Sealy got to go on the helicopter too, and Sealy loved it, let me tell you. All right, so we successfully found our way out of the Weddell Sea. It was pretty easy, to be honest. There were lots of open leads. The S.A. Agulhas II is built for ice breaking. We got out after maybe a day or so back to the open water. And then we began our journey up to South Georgia Island. Now, why did we go to South Georgia Island instead of going right back to Cape Town? There's a good reason. And for those of you who have been studying Ernest Shackleton and the history of the Imperial Trans-Antarctic Expedition, you'll know that South Georgia Island played a very, very important role in his expedition and their rescue. So let's bring up the next picture.
So Tim, as we're getting these images ready to go, oh, looks like there's a Braai real quick.
Yeah, right. You know, the celebration did not stop as we traveled to South Georgia and then back to Cape Town. This was a traditional South African braai or barbecue on the helideck on the back of the ship. You can see lots of members of the ship's crew and the expedition team. They put out these big grills on the helideck. It was a really nice day. We were surrounded by whales. It was a crazy scene to see ice and whales and smell, meat grilling. And everybody was really happy. But you can see in a South African braai, you pick your meat or you pick whatever you want to grill and you grill it yourself on top of this really hot grill surface. So this was just another way that we celebrated finding the Endurance on our way to South Georgia.
Tim, as we're getting some of the next photos ready to go, I do want to quickly mention, because we've had a lot of people introduce themselves from the chat. So I do want to say welcome to our friends who are joining us from Texas, North Carolina, Los Angeles, California. It looks like some of the Explorers Club members out on the West Coast are joining us today. So hello to you all. Minnesota, Canada, Italy, and also Toulon, France. Or it sounds like Fred from the Subsea team is finally back. So well, welcome home, Fred. So we're really excited to have all of you here for that. So we're about to get into South Georgia. Before we do that, I do want to maybe see, because we're kind of like we're building our story, we're building our journey along. Maybe this is a chance for us, before we get into talking about South Georgia, to maybe bring in some of our classrooms and see if any students have any questions about that first part of that. And
Absolutely.
And so maybe let's bring in our friends from Hillsdale, New Jersey. So Ms. Pauz's class. Let's see if we can maybe bring you on. If there's any students who have a question for Tim about what we've seen so far today.
Okay, Dylan, let me see. What's your question, honey? Go ahead. You can just ask it. Go ahead, Dylan.
Where in the Weddell Sea was the Endurance?
Did you say your name was Dylan?
Yes.
Hey, Dylan, great question. Thank you for asking it. So Endurance we sort of knew where to look, right? Because the Shackleton and Frank Worsley had recorded more or less the sync coordinates of the ship when it went down. So we had a general idea of where to look, but the tricky part was figuring out where the ship would have gone in the few days between the two really, the last two accurate recordings of where the ship was. And the ice, as we've learned, moves a lot, right? From day to day. So we sort of made a big box around that spot, and we ended up finding the ship towards the bottom of that search box, about 4 kilometers away from where that final coordinates of Frank Worsley's said it was. So he took those coordinates about a day after the ship sank, because there was no sun to take a sextant reading on the day that it actually sank. And it just gives you a sense of how much that ice moved in that one day from when the ship sank to when he could take a reading and figure out where they were on the ice. So the ice moved 4 kilometers or 3 miles or so away from the shipwreck in that one day between when the ship sank and when he took the reading. But now, because the AUV had GPS, right, it knew exactly where it was in the water, we have the perfect coordinates. We know exactly where the ship is now, and it's about 4 kilometers away from where those last recordings were.
Great question. I wanted to quickly mention that on explore.reachtheworld.org, on our resources page, we've created a really wonderful resource that helps students explore the math of the sinking, that when ships like the Endurance sink, they don't sink straight down. There's things like current that force the ship to move. And to give you a sense of some of the calculations that the subsea team, that Menson Bound, the chief archaeologist, and the other members of the Endurance expedition had to calculate in order to figure out where the ship might be. So let's bring on Miss Latour's class from Lincoln Elementary in Hasbrook Heights. And while we're bringing them on, well, I do see a question in the chat, Tim, and I assume he's nearby, but there's a student who's asking who Sealy is. So,
oh, that's a good question. Sealy is right here.
All right, there's Sealy Shackleton, named by popular demand from our students. So Sealy has been an amazing member of our expedition crew. So let's kick it over to Hasbrook Heights.
Go ahead. Wait, how scary was it to go through the roaring sporty sea?
Ooh, such a good question. Such a good question. And, I have not spent a lot of time on ships prior to this expedition. And I knew that the roaring 40s, and there's even the furious 50s, those like sections of the ocean are really known for rough waves. I found it to be very exciting, to be honest. I have had a lot of confidence that the SA Agulhas II had been through those waters before. But the thing that I really wasn't prepared for was how much the ship rolls like this from side to side. If you have been studying angles, you know that like a ship, if it's lying flat, if it rolled this way, it could roll like 18 degrees this way and then 18 degrees the other way. And that feels like a lot, especially when you're on the higher levels of the ship. You really go back and forth a lot. And I've even been told that sometimes the SA Agulhas II can go as much as 40 or 45 degrees from side to side, which is a long way from side to side. But for the most part, it was very exciting. You just had to be kind of safe because there was water washing over the back of the ship. You couldn't go onto the back deck when the water or when the seas were really rough. But if you did go on the back deck, sometimes the waves were like higher than you on the side. It looked like a scene from Moana. Someone on the expedition described it that way, where the waves were higher than your head as they sort of rolled past the ship. And it was a very neat experience.
Amazing question. I love that. I love the fact that it's clearly the students at Lincoln are really doing their geography, which as a former social studies teacher, I love. So let's go to Miss Schaefer's class, to another one of our amazing groups of students from Lincoln. We have any student questions there?
Hey, Miss Schaefer's class.
Hi. Hello. I'm Travis. What was it like camping on the ice?
Hey, Travis, good question. I didn't really know what to expect besides the fact that it might be kind of cold. But the thing that I was really happily surprised is that the team in charge of the ice camps, the team from White Desert, had all the perfect gear. In fact, they made it so warm and easy and comfortable for us that it kind of just felt like camping on land, except you were stepping on ice. If you thought about it, it was kind of crazy to think you're standing on ice above all that water. But if you didn't think too hard about it, it just felt like you were in a tent on sort of a chilly evening. And then you would pop out of the tent and see penguins, and it would be an immediate reminder that you're someplace a little different than most people get to camp.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for a nice question.
And Tim, what kind of food did you eat when you guys were out in the ice? Was it like an MRE, right? In the military, there's the meals ready to eat, which is the kind of just add water and let it cook on its own, or was it a little bit nicer than that?
It was quite a bit nicer than that. There was no real roughing it. The food was exceptional. I think there was some like curry, sort of Indian food with vegetables. There was rice. There was hot chocolate. There was coffee. It was a celebration meal that was really, really nicely managed by the White Desert team. I felt really lucky to and kind of just amazed that such food could be eaten in such a remote area. It was a really nice picnic.
That's awesome. And the White Desert guys, if you guys haven't seen, or those of you who are out in YouTube and Facebook land, if you haven't seen our live stream where Tim spoke with the White Desert folks, please check out that live stream on our YouTube channel. It really gives you an idea of the incredible work that they do and some of the preparations that they had to do. So let's bring in Miss Brancato's class, our last classroom in New Jersey, before we jump back into talking about South Georgia.
Hi, I'm Hussein from Miss Brancato's class. I was gonna ask if you had to face any obstacles in the ship. Did you guys have to go through any like icebergs or anything in your way?
Yeah, hey Hussein, great question. I have to say that one of my favorite things about this whole expedition was standing right on the bow, or the very frontmost spot of the ship, as we were breaking through ice, because you could really stand right over the front of the ship as we were cutting through the ice or breaking the ice. And sometimes, even with a ship as mighty as the Agulhas II, they realized that maybe the ice they were trying to get through was a little bit more than the ship could handle. So we would stop and we would start to slowly back up, and we back up a ways, and then we would build up some speed and go right through the ice. We'd rise up on top of it, and the full weight of the ship would crunch down on the ice, and these like lightning beams of cracks in the ice would shoot off in all directions, and then we would keep going through the ice. So that was a challenge, but really the people who were driving the ship, the captain, the ice pilot, all of the people up on the bridge have done that for many years. So they really knew what the ship could handle, when it was a good idea to like just build up some speed and go a little bit harder, and when it was probably a better idea to try to find a different way, look for one of those ice leads, maybe off to one of the sides where it would be an easier path on the ship.
Yeah, another great question. This is just yet another example of how in such safe hands and excellent hands you were, not just with Captain Knowledge Bengu, who is the captain of the Agulhas II, but his entire team. We also had a chance to speak with some of the cadets, some of which were part of their jobs were beginning to plan those paths and trying to figure out where the ship should go in terms of planning those next elements of the journey. So it's really incredible, and just speaks to how amazing that crew was and how lucky we were to be able to speak with them. So let's come back in. Let's start talking about South Georgia. I'm really excited to be able to share these photos and these videos with everyone. And while we're getting those queued up, Miss Mesk's students from PS1 wanted to know how long it took to get to South Georgia from that wreck site. So as we're bringing up the images again, I think that's a good question to bridge.
Yeah, it took us about 3 or 4 days to get from the sink site of Endurance to Gritvik, which is the whaling outpost, former whaling outpost that we visited in South Georgia. And about 1 day of that was breaking through ice to get to the open ocean. And then we could pick up the speed a little bit and head straight for South Georgia. And for those, I'll dive right into this picture because I love this picture. I love the story of Shackleton. I have followed and learned about it just alongside you on this voyage. And one of the things that still amazes me is that Shackleton and the other people on the James Caird lifeboat found South Georgia. It's a pretty big island, but it would be easy to miss it if you didn't know where you were. They did not have GPS. They didn't have a really great map at the time, anything that would really precisely tell them where they were, they had to use, the sextant. They had to use some of the tools for navigation at the time. And amazingly, if you go back to that picture, when we approached South Georgia, it was enveloped in this cloud bank. It was it would have been so easy. And in this picture, we're maybe a mile or two off the coast of the island. It would have been so easy to sail right past that island and not know it was ever there unless we knew for sure it was there, which we did because we had GPS and some modern map tools. But it just gave me a deeper appreciation for how Shackleton and the members of the expedition who were on the James Caird found this island in the middle of the ocean. And one other thing before we move on to the next picture is in this picture, we were surrounded by whales, which is going to be an important fact as we go to the next picture, because this area is sort of known for hunting whales from long ago, but now it's overrun with whales, which is pretty cool. So when we got into, actually, you know what? There's a video queued up of the SA Agulhas II arriving in harbor in Gritvik that I think will give you a good sense of what it was like to pull into this magical island. It was absolutely beautiful, and words can barely describe it, but I think this video might help. You can see up in front, there are some glaciers, some snow coming down into the bay, lots of high mountain peaks in the back. So arriving at South Georgia was a really exciting thing for all of us. We hadn't seen land for a very long time. I think we were maybe like going on 30 days without seeing land or even anything green. Think about that. We had been at sea, we'd been in the sea ice, or we'd been sort of part of this return journey back to Cape Town, and we had not seen solid land. It gave me a really, really good sense, again, for what Shackleton and his crew would have thought when they saw this solid land where they knew that there were people. So next picture, when we got there, it's important, this is a very remote place. We didn't want to bring any sort of seeds or invasive species or anything that was stuck to the Velcro on our shirts or in the treads of our boots. So on the previous picture, there's a bucket where we washed off our boots to make sure we weren't sort of carrying any seeds or anything that would be bad for the environment on South Georgia, cleaned off all of our gear. And then on the next picture, you can see the fast response craft that I think there are two of them on the SA Agulhas II. We climbed down a ladder on the side of the ship, and this craft took maybe 7 or 8 people at once into the former whaling outpost of Gritvik, which I believe is the next picture. And there you go. Look who greeted me when I touched land in Gritvik. It was fur seal pup season. These baby fur seals were everywhere, and they were so cute. This one came right up to me, and I sat down, and it came right up to me and started sniffing my knees and was very curious about me. It was like a little puppy with flippers, and we hung out for a little bit. Isn't it cute? It was so curious in me and who I was, and we just sort of sat like this for a while. All right, so you can see in the background of that video, there's some old rusty equipment from when Gritvik in South Georgia was a whaling outpost. And a whaling outpost is basically where people went out in ships and they hunted whales, and they brought those whales back to a place like Gritvik where they would process the whales and melt down the blubber into the oil that could be used for lamps, could be used for heating homes. It's not really used that much anymore. In fact, there are very few places around the world where people still hunt whales. But this was sort of a historical site where you could see what that might have been like a long time ago. And so for those of you who tried to tune into my live stream from Gritvik, and I appreciate you trying, when I got there, I was sort of realized that Gritvik is surrounded by mountains, and my satellite communication system was not going to work because it didn't have a clear view of the equator, which it needed to work. So I recorded a video while I was there. I climbed a hill so you could sort of see what it might have been like for Shackleton, and I think Tom Crean and Frank Worsley were the two others who crossed who crossed South Georgia with Shackleton. Gives you a sense of what they might have seen. Now, I made one mistake in my excitement for this video. When Shackleton and Tom Crean and Frank Worsley crossed South Georgia, they arrived at a different whaling outpost called Stromness, and that's a little bit further up the coast than Gritvik, but you'll get the idea when you see this video.
Right before the video gets cued in, I do, just because I knew that's what you were going to say, and our friends from Allen, Texas, were asking about if the Agulhas went into Stromness Harbor, where Shackleton, Worsley, Crean were managed to find assistance for the crew. But you guys went to Gritvik instead, correct?
We went to Gritvik, and the reason we chose Gritvik is because that is where Sir Ernest Shackleton is buried. And we went to that area specifically so that we could visit his gravesite and just sort of pay our respects and let him know that we had found his beloved ship Endurance. So that's a great intro to this video that will, I hope, give you an oversight of what it was like to be in Gritvik and what that was like.
Hey explorers, it's Tim. Welcome to the former whaling spot of Gritvik here on the South Georgia island. And we are here, of course, because we have come to pay tribute to the great Sir Ernest Shackleton, who is buried here on this tiny, tiny spot. Gritvik, by far, in my experience, has way more seals and baby seals than humans. I've seen a handful of people who live here year-round, but there are seals everywhere, and there are baby seals, pups, everywhere you walk. Right over my shoulder here, you can see a graveyard, and that is where Sir Ernest Shackleton is buried. You can walk to that graveyard along the coast here, stepping around the seals and their pups. And then down below me to this side is the former whaling town of Gritvik, and you can see all of the old storage tanks for the whale oil and the whale blubber and the things that the whalers used to harvest. There's no whaling anymore at South Georgia. All of this equipment is just resting and rusting, and really the animals have taken over here. It's been absolutely amazing to see this place. I'm so happy to share it with you. You can see the SA Agulhas II parked in the harbor right there over my shoulder. And the sun is just going down here in Gritvik on South Georgia Island. So happy you could join me here. Such a privilege to share this spot with you, which very few people get to visit. You can just imagine from where I am right now. I'm going to turn around. When Sir Ernest Shackleton and his expedition team members came over the top of these mountains, and they listened really hard, and they heard the sound of the whistle down here at the whale processing plant go off. It was a sign for the first time in a long time that there were humans nearby who could help them and rescue them. And I just get that feeling as I stand here on this hillside, and I'm just about to walk down in a very similar path that Ernest Shackleton would have walked down back into this small community and reconnect with the other members of the expedition.
All right, so I hope that gives you a little overview of what it was like to be at Gritvik. Again, Shackleton and his crew arrived at Stromness, which is a little bit further up the coast. But Gritvik, and you can see that rusty sort of former equipment from a whaling outpost. gives you a good sense of what they might have seen in Stromness when they came down out of those mountains. You could see I could barely speak myself, and I had just finished climbing up the hill so I could show you all of that. It was hard. It would have been very hard work, and it's a huge accomplishment that they crossed that whole island to find rescue in Stromness.
And I think even though the place where you were describing the experience was not where it actually happened, but I think the fact that you can still imagine coming down a similar path into Stromness and that Shackleton and the small group of folks who were with him coming down absolutely exhausted and hearing that bell and being able to see signs of civilization for the first time. Especially because I think it's important to note, as we're seeing the amazing pictures of mountains and glaciers, that from accounts that we've read, Shackleton and his crew were probably the first people to actually cross the entire island of South Georgia in history. And it's not because they were explorers and they were looking to do one more thing. That was the only way that they could make it close to a group where people could end up rescuing the rest of their crew. So they made history in a lot of different ways, but it was by necessity. And I think that's a really important element to bring in here. And it's just so incredible that they were able to do that, because it looks exhausting now. Imagine doing it over 100 years ago.
Yeah, they were really battling for their lives, and they were aware of the fact that the rest of their expedition team members were still on Elephant Island, and that if they didn't find help at the whaling station in Stromness, nobody was going to go back and rescue their expedition team members on Elephant Island. So they had a lot of motivation to keep going and accomplished an incredible feat. They were definitely the first to cross the interior of South Georgia.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to bring on our friends in Hillsdale again. Let's see if we can get another classroom from Ms. Pause's class, another student from Ms. Pause's class, to see if they have a question about maybe something that you've seen. So does anyone have a question in Hillsdale?
Wait, you see you? Dylan, scoot over. Nope, the other way.
I'm Renee, and was there a lot of ice when you were leaving South Georgia?
I think I heard, was there a lot of ice as we were leaving South Georgia?
Yes.
Yeah, well,
that was from Renee, by the way.
Oh, hey, Renee. Yeah, great question. We had left behind the ice of the Weddell Sea probably 2 or so days earlier. Every once in a while, there were little pieces of ice that we saw. But once you get into those, like the furious 50s and the roaring 40s, like the ice sort of melts and disappears pretty quickly. I don't think it's unheard of that some ice would make it all the way to South Georgia from the Weddell Sea, but I did not see any that looked like it came from the Weddell Sea up in South Georgia. However, in the harbor of Gritvik, I saw some pieces of ice that had come down from the mountains of South Georgia. So the glaciers, the ice, the snow that originated in the mountains of South Georgia definitely sort of comes down into the harbor and breaks off into the harbor itself. So different sources of ice, and it was definitely cold enough still to support ice and snow, but not as much ice as the Weddell Sea.
And that was actually a question that we were getting from the chat about air temperature and about ice forming in those places. And I know I can answer the first part, which was really, with the ice that is forming in the Weddell Sea, why isn't all of the ocean turning to ice? And it's that because of the salt, ice forms at ice freezes at a lower temperature than it does. So it's not at 32 degrees Fahrenheit like ice cubes that you put in your drink, but at a lower temperature. But tell us a little bit about maybe when you guys were maybe camping on the ice above the Endurance, what the air temperature was there, and then maybe also in South Georgia if there was a difference, because students are definitely interested in knowing what that weather was like.
Yeah, the coldest day that we had in the Weddell Sea was somewhere around minus 30 Celsius, which is, minus 25 or so Fahrenheit. And that was mostly because of the wind. The wind, when it blew in your face, made it really, really cold. And those temperatures are definitely enough to freeze seawater. It can make seawater, if it's not moving around as much, start to freeze and create that ice pack that we saw in the pictures of the Weddell Sea, where we're able to camp on top of the ice. It was so thick. But as you get a little bit further north, the gyre, or the circular moving ice of the Weddell Sea, starts to send some of that ice up into the warmer latitudes. And by warm, it's like a little bit warmer, you know, it's in the 20s. It's right around the freezing temperature, but it's not cold enough to make moving water freeze into pack ice the way that it is in the Weddell Sea. So we could definitely feel, as we left the lower latitudes and as we left the Weddell Sea, the temperature starting to rise. I wouldn't say it was warm yet, but it was warmer to the point where water wanted to stay in its liquid form, and we didn't see as much ice or even really icebergs after a short while after leaving the Weddell Sea.
Oh, thank you for that. That's super helpful. So let's bring in Miss Latour's classroom and see if we have any students there who have any questions about South Georgia or anything else.
Okay. When you had found Shackleton's ship, was there anything specific that you liked about the ship?
Ooh, I liked so much about the ship. Great question. It was so exciting to see the ship. I can't express enough how exciting it was after 107 years to be the first people to see this ship. The ship, as you got to see on the pictures, is in really good shape. Sometimes shipwrecks are really busted open or have deteriorated in a way that makes it hard to imagine what they look like when they were in their prime. But Endurance is in really good shape. And one of the things that really surprised me is that when you look closely, there are lots of sort of artifacts of everyday life on the ship that were very exciting. There were dishes, there were cups, there were boots. You could see exactly where the mast broke off. You could see the splinters on the mast. You could see, after studying the historical pictures of Endurance, you could look through a window, a porthole, and say, you know, I can't go in there right now, but I know on the other side of this window is where Shackleton's room was. This is the actual room that he had on the Endurance. So yes, there are a lot of really interesting artifacts on the ship. And there are also a lot of really interesting marine animals, which is a whole other topic, but there's people are already starting, marine biologists are already starting to look at the wreck and say, whoa, what is that crazy crab? Or what is that crazy creature that's living on this wreck? And we're learning a lot about some of the animals in the Weddell Sea just by looking at what's living on the wreck.
I was actually going to say that my favorite thing in looking at those videos and photos, and we were so lucky and so excited to see them as some of the images were coming out as we were getting ready for the big announcement event that we had a couple of weeks ago. My favorite was seeing the sea creatures that had made the Endurance their home over the last 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
That to me was incredible when you think about the fact that it was found 10,000 feet below the ocean surface, mm-hmm. and there's not as much known about what lives in that deep because it's really hard to get things down there, whether it's a submarine or a remote operated vehicle. And to be able to collect that information just because by happenstance those things decided to move into this new ship that they happened to find was incredible. And to see the scientists that were immediately on social media saying, oh, I think that's a new type of crab. I don't think we ever saw that it might actually live in the Antarctic waters before. That got me so excited. So let's yeah, absolutely. Let's bring in Miss Brancato's class and see if we have any students there that have a question.
Go ahead. You have to pull your mask out over here.
Hi, my name is Brianna.
Loud.
So when you guys were doing like the celebration, how did you guys feel like cold or like warm when you were like there?
Yeah, great question, Brianna. Thank you so much for asking it. We really knew that it was going to be cold in the Weddell Sea. So everyone who was on the ship came prepared with the right clothing, the right gear to make it a really comfortable spot for us, we had windproof outer jackets. We wore lots of layers. We had extra socks. We had waterproof boots, all the things that you need to, I'm sure as you're walking around New Jersey in the winter, you don't wear what you would wear in the summer. You have special clothes to sort of keep you warm and keep you dry, right? So we did all of those things, and we used that gear to really make us comfortable on the ice. It felt very comfortable. I was not uncomfortable at all. I could have stayed out there all day and not been too cold. And if I did get a little cold, I could just duck into that tent and get some hot chocolate or, something to warm me up a little bit. There was plenty of that.
And I think I saw in Miss Brincato's class, I think that was Principal Colangelo who made an appearance.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
So I just wanted to congratulate both of you, Tim especially being on the ship with this amazing find. We've been following you for a couple of years. We are big fans, and I am incredibly inspired by the discovery, and congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our students appreciate everything that you're doing, and so do I.
Thank you so much. And
Thank you.
I know that especially we heard recently from our friends at Lincoln that they knew how long the expedition was going because they were noticing the length of your beard. So I think a lot of people got surprised because you're so clean shaven now.
Yeah. So I skipping ahead a little bit, I came home and my kids sort of didn't recognize me with all my whiskers. So they went, and I have to say it feels really good to not have all the scratchy whiskers anymore.
Yeah, I bet. So we're running a little bit low on time now, but I do want us to quickly mention to all of our classrooms out there that we have set up this amazing Padlet. We'll do a live stream next week where we'll share some of the videos on stream and talk a little bit about that. We'll do an event soon, but we want to make sure to get the classrooms excited about what this event is. So we want to put the questions out to you based on the questions that we ask of the crew. So we're gonna bring up the Padlet just in 1 second. We're not gonna be able to play any videos for time, but we want our students to contribute to the amazing reflections, because the expedition, we're seeing that members of the different expedition teams and the crew are home. And so before that happened, Tim did an amazing job. He collected, I believe, 30 videos of all the different members of the crew and of the expedition team telling us exactly what their favorite aspects of the expedition were, what they were planning on doing next. Some of them are going right off on another expedition. Some people are enjoying some well-earned time at home. And so we want you to read and watch some of these amazing reflections, but more importantly, we want your input. We want to hear from you. So teachers out there that are watching this live or in the future who are watching this recording, start to ask your students the same questions. We have some amazing prompts. I believe we can put this into the chat, the link to this Padlet. So I really would love for all of you students out there, start thinking about the reflections that you have from following this incredible expedition. Start thinking about the things that you really love, the things that you want to do next. Hopefully that some of you are thinking about, I want to be an ice pilot, or I want to be an expedition leader, or I want to be a subsea specialist and fly those ROVs. Maybe some of you are thinking about that, or maybe some of you are just thinking about your own adventures that you want to do. Regardless of what it is, I want you to start planning those out. And as you're having those conversations with fellow students and your teachers, we want you to contribute to these reflections. And we'll be sharing those amongst our amazing learning community. And we'll also be sharing those with members of the expeditionary team, Tim included. So please use that link, and please begin to do that. And so as we begin to wrap up, I would like to bring I know a couple of our classrooms had to had to run because it is getting close to lunchtime here, especially on the East Coast. So if we can bring in Ms. Pauz's class and Ms. Latour's class again, because we have to end every single Reach the World live stream with a really important send-off. So if we see lots of waving. Hello, everyone. So wonderful to see you. Let's unmute you all and end this properly. Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. Tim, so wonderful to see you. So glad to see you at home. So great to see you with an amazing connection. I know it was a little bit harder to connect when we were on board. It's a lot easier in Chicago. And excited to speak with you again really soon and share some more stories from the expedition.
Yeah, Chris, if we have 10 more seconds, there's a photo of me standing next to Shackleton's grave that I think we should use to close us out, because it brings this story of my visit to South Georgia to an end. It's important to know that the expedition team visited Shackleton's grave and paid our respects and had a really nice ceremony that you'll be able to see when the documentary comes out later this year. But if that photo is available of the gravesite, I think it might be a nice sort of way to end. There we go. There's that. Look at that amazing gravesite. Fitting gravesite for an Antarctic exploration giant. A little bit of poetry on the back, exactly what you'd expect from Shackleton. And just a beautiful site where Frank Wild, his right-hand man, is buried right next to him in the same graveyard. So beautiful place. Seemed like a really nice place to be buried. And it was certainly a nice place to visit. So I loved my visit to South Georgia, and I love sharing it with you all today. Thanks for joining.